What's up everybody, it's Sean here and I'm back today to give you a review of the Nike Air Max 1 86 OG Big Bubble in this Air Max Day Royal Blue and Volt colorway. So this shoe was the marquee sneaker for this year's Air Max Day. Air Max Day is a day of celebration for Nike's Air Max line, which has been happening since 2014. So for this year's 10-year anniversary for the holiday, Nike released this special version of the Air Max 1 Big Bubble, which pays homage to the release from 2014, which was another OG colorway of the Air Max 1 featuring a Volt midsole, but instead of blue, that original pair utilized red instead. So these dropped on March 26th, and they retailed for a price of $150 US, and though these didn't actually release here in Canada, the equivalent Canadian price when converted is approximately 220 Canadian dollars. And the official colorway for this shoe is Sail, Royal Blue, and Volt, and these sold out pretty much instantly on the Nike Sneakers app. So for those who are unfamiliar with the Air Max 1 86, this is a different version of the Air Max 1 silhouette, which is a nod to the original limited run of the Air Max 1, which took place back in 1986. So the more well-known version of the Air Max 1 that we know and love, that's actually the 1987 silhouette, and the reason for that is because back in 86, this original version had this larger air unit, along with a slightly different midsole. But they quickly realized that in cold climates, this larger air bubble was prone to cracking. So Nike quickly went back to the drawing board, redesigned the Air Max 1 a little bit, and then they dropped the 87 version, which has continued to live on until today. So for this specific colorway, when you compare it to the recently released white and royal blue Big Bubble version, at first glance they look very similar, minus of course this Volt midsole, but when you look closer into the details, this Air Max Day version actually incorporates a lot of more OG touches, specifically onto the upper of this shoe, which I guess is a callback to that 2014 version of this shoe. So diving into the details of this sneaker, starting things off with the toe box, you'll see here instead of the traditional white mesh that we saw in the normal white and blue Big Bubble Air Max 1, for this Air Max Day version, they utilize a different mesh. So this is a bit more of a tighter weave to it, it feels a little bit rougher to the touch, and it's done in more of a sail color instead of the true white on the other pair. Surrounding the front toe cap, we have this synthetic blue colored suede which feels like felt to the touch. And then covering the U-throat and the mid panel, we have this light gray colored synthetic suede, which also feels like felt. The top two eyelets are covered in this blue colored TPU or plastic, and then overlaid on the mid panel, we have a blue colored synthetic swoosh. Surrounding the top portion of the ankle collar area, instead of the silky smooth material found on the white and blue Big Bubbles, for this version we have more of that rough textured mesh, and then beneath this covering the heel, we have more of that light gray colored synthetic suede, we have that blue suede covering the bottom, and we have Nike Air embroidered across the back in blue. Hanging off the shoe, these also come with a blue colored hang tag with Nike Air branding. And then as far as the laces go, so these come with a flat style sail colored lace, and they have these metallic Volt colored lace tips, which was a nice added touch. Underneath this, the material on this pair also differs from the white and blue Big Bubbles, so instead of utilizing the same mesh that we saw on the toe box, for this pair we have a much silkier and softer nylon, and then on the top of the tongue, instead of Nike Air Max branding, here we have 326 branding in blue instead. On the back of the tongue we have this Volt colored liner, and then as far as the back of the interior of the shoe goes, here we have this white colored liner, we have the size of the shoe pressed onto the medial side, and just like any other Big Bubble version, the collar of the shoe is pretty minimally padded. For the insole, so nothing special here, this is your typical foam line insole, but we have this unique wavy pattern to it on the top in blue, and then we have this rectangular tag stitched onto the heel with Nike branding in Volt. So the upper of this shoe sits atop this very chunky polyurethane foam midsole, which is entirely painted in this Volt color. Encased within the forefoot, we have a small air unit, but on the heel of the shoe, this is where we'll find this massive air unit, which if you look through it, we have these 4 visible chambers instead of the normal 3 on a typical Air Max 1. And then finally, turning this pair over to the bottom, so this outsole is crafted using a mix of black, blue, and Volt colored rubber. Just like any other Air Max 1, we have this waffle style traction pattern on the forefoot, and running down the heel, we have Nike Air branding. So that breaks down the look and the construction of this pair. And for those wondering about how these fit, to me these fit like any other Air Max 1 Big Bubble, which for those who haven't tried these before, pretty much fit like any other recent Air Max 1 period. So whatever size you normally wear for any normal Air Max 1, I'd recommend the same size for this pair. So in the case for me, my foot measures as a true size 10, slightly on the wider side. I usually wear a size 10 in recent Air Max 1s. That's the size I picked up in this pair and they fit me perfectly fine. If you have a really wide foot though, you'd probably be better off going up a half size, but everyone else, just go true to size. Moving on to the comfort, so these feel like any other Air Max 1, despite the fact that we have this super chunky air unit. So this, in my opinion, doesn't really change the comfort of this shoe. Generally speaking, it's still a bit more on the firmer side. It's going to be fine for an everyday casual use sneaker, but it's not going to be a shoe that's extremely plush and soft underfoot. Last but not least, in terms of the quality and craftsmanship, so this is the biggest issue I had with this release. And I'm not talking about Air Max 1 Big Bubbles in general, this one in particular was noticeably worse. So the material quality was all synthetic materials. So we just have a bunch of meshes, nylons, and synthetic suede, which, like I mentioned earlier, really feels like felt to the touch. So this I was fine with. It's a typical Air Max 1 Big Bubble, but the build quality or the lack thereof of this shoe was extremely poor and noticeable. So I'll save the worst for last. First of all, there were some small issues like the paint job on the midsole wasn't that great. There was a few long threads throughout the shoe that I had to trim down myself. And then the biggest issue I had was the toe box on my right foot specifically came extremely wrinkled. So I posted this on my Instagram stories and I got a ton of people replying to that story saying that they had the exact same issue. Specifically, it was also their right foot that just came pre-creased straight out of the box. So I don't know what happened in the factory. I don't know if it was just a different team assembling the right foot or something in the process went wrong, which caused specifically the right foot to be more poorly made than the left. I know these creases weren't as noticeable once you wear them, but it still was noticeable, and it's just disheartening opening up a brand new pair of shoes and seeing such a mangled, ugly, and gross toe box. So leave a comment down below to let me know if you guys face similar issues with wrinkling in the toe box, and if you did, was it specifically the right shoe only? Because I'm very curious what went down and what went wrong over at Nike's factory. So with all that being said, now let's toss these on feet, I'll lace them up and I'll show you guys how these look. If you can overlook the poor quality control on this release, I think this is a great addition for any Air Max 1 fans collection. I know this Volt midsole isn't for everyone. There was a lot of people hating on this release, which to be fair, there was also a lot of people hating on the original 2014 release as well, because I remember they were sitting at the employee store and I was able to grab mine with no problems. So for me though, this is a nice callback to that release from a decade ago. I love how they changed up the colors, giving us this royal blue colorway instead of the red. And while I can't say that I'm a huge fan of this Big Bubble silhouette, I think I like the 87 look a bit more, but it's still a clean looking sneaker and I love how this Volt just really pops. So leave your thoughts down below. Let me know what are your overall thoughts on this Air Max Day Big Bubble release. Were you able to grab these for retail? Did you take an L and pay resale for these? Or is this not your thing and you pass on them altogether? As usual, if you guys enjoyed this review, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can follow me on Instagram at sgo8, check me out on X at sean.go spelled out, and visit my website at seango.ca. So thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. Hopefully I helped you in some way. Appreciate the continued love and support. Thank you for all the comments, the likes, for everyone that hits me up on Instagram, all that stuff. I truly appreciate it. So thank you again, and I'll catch all of you in my next review.